Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and theys out there. Welcome to Oye Dimelo Cinema Club. For tonight, or today, depending when you're watching this, I was the one who picked the movie. I picked The Maltese Falcon, but I'm not going to be talking about it by myself. I have this great gang of people. With me are, boom, boom, we have Chris, we have Jason, we have
Yo,
JP and Michaela. Boom, 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 boom. All right. So for today, I picked the Maltese Falcon with Humphrey Bogart. It's written, directed by John Huston. You also have Mary Astor and a few other actors and actresses, which I really have no idea who they are. It's a black and white movie. It's from 1941. Now, I picked this movie because it kept coming up on my radar. It just is one of those that either in podcasts and or articles or just I kept getting on lists that I was looking at, the Maltese Falcon, like Humphrey Bogart. I haven't seen a whole bunch of his movies, so it's one that I just kind of tucked away for Oye Dinelo, and yeah, uh, I decided to pick it. Before I give my first impressions, I'm gonna throw it out to the group. Boom. All right, let's start with El Profesor. Chris, what were your first impressions?
So, has anybody seen it before?
I have.
Okay, so for me, I've seen it before. I really like it. It's like the definition of film noir. It identifies a main male character at the time as like a super controlling person. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but as throughout the movie, every single scene, Bogart is like, nope, you don't have control. I have control. Doesn't matter if it's cops, if it's DA, doesn't matter if it's bad guys with guns. So it's like a super machismo movie for the 1940s, but it's definitely like the definition of film noir in my mind, at least what I believe is film noir. It's dark. It's a crime drama. It's excellent. I really, really like it because for me, it just builds and builds and builds. And Peter Lorre, as a child, I watched a lot of Looney Tunes. I don't know about you guys, but like growing up, like Peter Lorre's Looney Tunes, he was like they had built many characters on Peter Lorre's face. I don't know how else to say it. But that's basically what it is for me. It was my first trip into film noir. I didn't know what it was before I saw this movie probably about 25 years ago.
Nice. I'll pass it to Mr. Eccles because I believe he has also seen it.
Yo.
What's going
So,
on?
yes, sir. So, first time, second time seeing this film, I think. Maybe even third. I don't know. Maybe I watched it here and there, but definitely seen it at least one other time when I was making my way through the AFI 100 list, which this is, of course, a member of one of America's 100 shiniest, bestest movies. I like this movie. Like Chris said, it's a quintessential film noir. It's um, it's that old detective gumshoe thing. It's classic Bogart. Uh, you know, I really liked this movie the first time I saw it. The dialogue was always kind of like because it's so sharp. It was always kind of hard to follow. I found it watching it with subtitles this time. It was even harder to follow reading it. So I just turned them off and this is better off if I just listen because sometimes weird 1940s gumshoe slang would pop up and I'm like, wait, what? And I probably would have caught the context better if I just had been listening. um, I gotta say, this movie, a lot of it doesn't hold up 20 years later for me, to be honest with you. Um, because I think it's been about that long since I originally saw this, probably. But it doesn't really hold up for me. It doesn't
Okay.
have.
A twist.
I don't
There's
want to
no
say it's
twist.
problematic because that
Okay.
sounds cliche,
Well, hold
but
on to
it's
that thought then, and we'll get back to it and after we're done
okay.
with first
Sure.
impressions. All right. But is that other than that you want to get into anything else? Kind of
Oh no, I'm just going to say that I think the movie is still very smart. It's a little confusing. You know, it deserves a couple of watches, I think. Um, there's some parts of the story where I'm like, wait, what? Who happened to who? You know, like there's a couple things that didn't quite get. Nothing that like blows the story wide open, just like the moment, really. And I would imagine a lot of people feel that way. But all in all, still a good movie. It's not Humphrey Bogart's best film. Not to say it's not his top five. It's just not his best. You know, some people might
okay.
say that this is his best, but I don't think so. Those are my
Interesting.
first impressions.
I feel you and Michaela might have fighting words over that. But, we'll get to that later. All right. So, how about we go with Mr. JP?
You despise me, don't you? That's not even the same movie. Not even the same movie. No. But Humphrey's also in that movie. It's Casablanca, so that's funny, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. No, it's definitely one of the first noir movies. It's crazy because this movie is so like in the culture and zeitgeist that there's stuff in this film that's like, oh, I know that. I get that reference from a different reference. So this became like JP's discovery is like, oh, so that's where that quote's from. Oh, so that's where that's from. But yeah, no, you know, it's insane. Like, I kind of feel the same way. Like, even with, because this movie, it is confusing. But then again, like, we see in way, way worse pictures where my poor little brain cannot wrap around anything. But it almost comes off as this is going to be hilarious. Like, almost like an anime type trope before anime was even a thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, oh, I'm smarter than you. Oh, but I got the upper hand, Mr. Bond. But it's not Bond. It's Mr. Spade, Detective Spade. You know, maybe that's why he was dealt with the wrong hand. We prefer cloves, kings, and queens. We don't want no fucking spades in this picture. But overall, like it's great. It's great. It's one of those movies that you gotta admit, like, yeah, in the culture and history, very important movie. But I kind of agree with Jason, where I don't think it really held up that well. It's like there's a real like it's a product of its time, yes, and there's a few like just the whole like what's going on. Thankfully, the movie is simplistic enough where it's like that's fine because there's only like 3 locations in this movie, so the narrative is easy enough to follow. But there's so much like who's doing that, who's doing this, who's doing that. Of course, not as bad as let's say the second and third Pirates of the Caribbean movie, but like definitely close enough where it's like, you guys need to find something to focus on because I'm kind of losing a bit here. But overall, like I can't say that the movie is bad. It's an important movie. I enjoyed it, but I don't know if it's one of those movies that I would like revisit again, especially like films that are considered like important in history. I'll probably see like a movie like let's say Sunset Boulevard again as opposed to this movie. Just because I find that story a bit more intriguing, and it's the same thing, like very important in its place in history. But yeah, I guess maybe noir is just not my thing.
All right. Well, thank you for that, JP. You know what's also a product of its time? Weird Al Yankovic, and his time is over. So
he outlived those motherfuckers. You shut the fuck up, you mother. You shut the fuck up. You shut. He's still on tour, you ass.
All right. So next up, we have Michaela.
Yeah, I mean, this has been something that's been on my list for a while. I have such a soft spot for classic movies like these, especially when it's in black and white. Like, as much as y'all didn't get the story, y'all can't deny how gorgeous that cinematography was. Like, y'all have to at least give it that.
Oh, no, without a doubt. I was watching this, and there was a few camera moves that I'm like, that's freaking awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah.
I think the reason why there's, like, such a disconnect is, like, I think they weren't able to do something that's, like, you're always given as advice in the story. Like, I noticed that because it kind of bothered me this time around, too, where they were telling a lot of the story instead of showing it.
Yeah.
And like that's what made it hard to follow. And like
very expositional.
Exactly. Which they make up for, and like I think that's why it's interesting that you can watch it, because it is so expositionally heavy. Like if you are not paying attention to what these characters are saying, you will not understand what is happening. Right. But they do it in such a smart way, and like, guys, this is what sexy writing looks like. Like some of the dialogue was just so like, oh,
okay.
If words could do kung fu, that's what this was. Oh,
okay. Sexy writing or literary masturbation?
Why can't it be both? And just because you think that's a sin means you're a prude. But anyways, I really enjoyed it. It's always good to see Peter Lorre. He's one of my favorite actors to see. Yeah. No, like this was just like a feel good thing, and I can see why a lot of people wouldn't think it holds up. But honestly, I could just watch it without sound and just admire how beautiful it is.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I will go then now for first impression. Thanks, guys. I was talking to Jason about it. It's one of those, and kind of like JP mentioned, I don't know. I feel like I've seen this. I must have been really young, or I've seen a lot of scenes where there's been like, kind of like a movie dissection or noir, like whenever they talk about noir. So everything just seems super familiar. Or like JP was saying was like, oh, that's where that is from type of moments. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it a lot. And again, I think we're all gonna agree on certain things that maybe don't stand the maybe are haven't aged well, or things would be done differently this time. But for the time period, the I was really impressed with the camera work. I thought it was going to be way more like static, like stationary shots and all that. But they did some cool stuff with the camera. Yeah, the dialogue was. Whew, I feel like I also told Jason this is one of those movies where the fast talking, detective just like is a great example of that, especially of Bogart, right? Even when he's at the DA office and they have the stenographer and he's just like going off on like this tangent, and then he's like, "You got that, buddy, or you need me to slow down?" And he's like, "Oh no, I got it." Stuff like that. I'm a great at my impression of Bogart. It's pretty spot on, don't you guys think?
That was my favorite scene in the movie, to be honest. I love that scene. He's like, "Good job."
Yeah. It came full force. So first time actually seeing all the way through, I enjoyed it. Yeah, a lot of exposition at the beginning. They even had the scroller. I wasn't even thinking they would have that. I was like making myself a little drink, and I was like, oh, we're reading time. So I do agree there was a lot of exposition. It's almost like I feel like they ran out of time. I mean, it's not a super long movie, but the very end, it's like a lot of noir, a lot of detective movies and stuff like that right now are kind of like, I don't want to say the Ocean 11, but they like set everything up. You don't know what happens, and then at the very end, it's like, well, let me tell you what happened or how we got this done, and they like just show basically flashbacks of what happened. Whereas here, they were just saying it and filling in the blanks very quickly, which again was that style and just like how smart he was as a private eye. So that being said, now that we got everyone's first impressions, yeah, let's get into before we talk about characters. Well, no, let's talk about favorite characters first. Let's talk about characters and a few other things before we jump back into what might make it that it's not that it hasn't aged, if you will. So, for favorite characters, anyone think of one just off the top of their head that comes to mind?
Yeah, I'll say this even before I tell you my favorite character. This movie was released October 3rd, 1941. So that makes this movie 81 years old. And this would be its birthday week.
Yeah.
This would be the week it was released. So
That's fun.
So I saw this on its birthday. I didn't even know that.
there you go. Boom. Um,
Pretty
My
cool.
favorite character, honestly, because this movie does feel a lot like a piece of theater because there's not really a ton of like move. I mean, there's moving about with the characters, but they're sort of in one location having most of the dialogue that's exposition, and this could have very well been a play. The only scenes that aren't really theater are just the transitional scenes, like when he's traveling from one location to the next, or jumping in a cab for that one shot, those kind of things. And then most of it takes place in living rooms and offices and hotel rooms and stuff like that. So, um, for that reason, I feel like, I mean, listen, Peter Lorre is just like sensational to watch in this thing. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
He's just delicious to chew up and spit out and look at and then finish eating it because it still tastes so good. I mean, like Chris said, like he became a Looney Tune character after this thing. You know what I mean? Like he's like just a character in his own right. I mean, maybe not specifically after this movie, but he's just a weird little dude, man, and he's always interesting, and his acting is always clever and cool and funny and menacing. It's many things all at once. He's just a card to look at. But I also like the guy who played, the older dude who was moving the monies around and stuff. I forget his name.
Gutman?
Yeah,
He was
Gutman.
great.
yeah, he's just fantastic in this thing. But yeah, I guess, I'm going to go with Peter Lorre's weird character, my favorite.
Mm-hmm. Mr. What?
All right. Anyone else? Yeah, it's hard for me because I feel he's definitely Cairo. What a fun name and very skeevy and yeah, and you don't really know where he stands and all that. Gutman has some great things. I think I'll go with Bogart though. I was just really impressed with this movie compared to Casablanca and stuff. I guess later on we can maybe talk about that. What other movies people in the group have seen and all that. But this one, the other ones, he's gotten more like the silent. I mean, this one he's silent at the beginning because he's just kind of taking that in, and he's like, I'm not gonna say anything until I really have to say it, type of thing. But I would say Bogart, just like the way he delivers everything, the way he reacts to people, his kung fu chops are on point. He's just very smart. It's like I could watch a series with this character, of just
And it doesn't feel fake smart either. That's the crazy thing. He wears it well.
yeah. So I would go with Bogart in just the overall, because again, it's very exposition wise, and so it's through him, through his facial expressions, through his eyes that we are actually seeing what's happening, right? So Bogart is my answer.
I think it's so hard for me to. Oh, sorry.
No, I was gonna throw it to you, Michaela, since it seemed like you had thoughts.
Yes. Well, it's just it would be hard for me to choose a performance from this thing because I think everyone did their jobs. People earned their paychecks with this film. But my favorite character was Effie, the secretary.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure if he did not have that woman, he would not be a good detective.
Come on.
She's a good man, sister.
I mean that's a character that for sure would kind of be like Poppy in Iron Man or in a bunch of other movies.
Dude, the woman in Rear Window, 100%. That helps him out the entire time. I agree, 100%. Effie is my favorite character too.
Oh, really? Okay.
She didn't get enough scenes.
just be. She's just like, oh, you're in trouble again. Oh, that's fine, darling. I already had coffee ready 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
So
like
you
a
guys
dead
saw
man.
you guys saw more to her than was really there, other than she was a badass. Like didn't ask unnecessary questions, and did what she had to do. Right.
Yes, and she was the only woman he appreciated too. Like if he was not as kind to her,
Yeah.
I don't think I would have enjoyed that as much. But like the fact that he was just like, I know that you are the reason why this thing runs.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think my favorite character had the best shot in the movie, and that was Archer, because he took that bullet really well. Just like, and just tumbles down the hill. Oh, are you plaguing? I've been shot. Oh, boy.
You can't be like classic movie death. Like shoot, like you can't beat them.
But like like when he wrote, like he was like, "That's not a stunt man. That's the actor rolling in dirt." It's like that doesn't look like soft dirt either. There's some boulders in that ground, man.
That looks like a set more than anything else, also.
Right. I would have liked to see more of his character because he seemed like a really cool, swell guy. Poor dude, being a fucking being cuckolded in the damn movie. Like he died a really silly death, and then they just continue to take giant shits on him. The poor man. Like the writer really hated his character. I think this is based on a book, so I want to know if the book took even bigger dumps.
There was more like of that in the book from what I've read. Like more of the cuckolding.
Yeah, there's more backstory or cuckolding, I guess, if you would say. I didn't read it, but I can only imagine a good noir that's, they like to deep dive into the world, right? Into the characters and the locations and stuff.
Yeah.
That was my only problem with the movie was that, well, not my only problem, but one of the problems for me was
cuckolding.
Yeah, no, that he was like not at all pissed off at all that he died. He was not worried that he died. He was like, apparently Archer died,
No. At
the beginning, he wasn't pissed. At the end, he was like, fuck this woman.
No.
No, because he's a man and he had things to do before.
Yeah, that was it.
So, no. You guys missed it. He talks about it early on.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, this is, I think, the part where, hey, English, my second language, but damn did I pay attention to this movie. No, I think that he did mention it because I felt the same thing early on, because he's even like, hey, when he's like stepping out after they know that he's dead, it's like, go ahead and call in the people and they can scratch out what Archer's name and just put, his own full name, kind of like very cold. But then he mentions like, hey, just because I don't like the man or just because I didn't like my partner doesn't mean that I don't, respect the fact that he got killed. Like he has a conversation with that early on, which I think explains it. Because then we also find out, and I can't remember if it's before or after the cuckolding information that's dropped. But he mentions that. He's like, I didn't necessarily respect him. I didn't like him. He was my partner. And that, at the end of the day, is where the respect comes in.
Yeah, but he wasn't that upset when it happened. Like, when he found out, he was like, all right, well, when we tell his wife, make sure she doesn't come around calling me. Like, immediately, it was like, all right, I guess he's dead. I felt like they didn't do that well.
He didn't like him, right? Clearly, he's cuckolding
him. He did not like him. Yeah, totally.
But he respects it. And at the very end, it's like, he's part of the business. He's one of me. He's a private eye.
That first 5 minutes when she walks into the office and he's just eyeballing her body up and down like Humphrey Bogart, and then Miles is doing it too. I was like, this is a little creepy. Like, they're 100% like, I'm going to get her. No, I'm going to get her. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say is I think that specific way of dealing with emotions is a very indicative time of like what masculine emotions should have been at the time, which is very like yes, we still struggle with it as a culture, but like that's perfect example why we struggle with it as a culture.
Mhm.
You know, and you also have to remember that this was happening between World War I and World War II, and so like men were supposed like I feel like there was like that idea and that you have to be like on your toes the whole time, you know, so you can't just like show what's actually inside. Like, and I also think that was like a big part of like the detective stuff too. He's supposed to be a little bit skeezy.
He is.
I mean, they all are, right? They all, I would imagine, are on the take somewhat.
Yeah, there's no clean person in this movie.
Because then when he's talking to his lawyer or whatever, he's kind of like, how much is it going to take, right? Like, what's the price to kind of get this or that? You know, like, don't focus on this. All right. Cool. Let's talk about, I know we kind of mentioned it already, and we talked about some of the camera shots and all that. Do people have some favorite scenes or any that pop out at them at the moment?
Well, I did talk about my favorite shot in the movie.
Hey-o!
I actually do have a favorite moment because this one caught me off guard, which is so crazy because like I didn't even think twice about it until it started happening in the movie. And it's that I guess we're now going into spoilers. Ooh, spoilers. Where Humphrey Bogart is with fucking I like how they call him Fat Man, but then his name is Gutman. And it's like, you guys gotta pick, well, what's his name? And so eventually they stuck with Gutman. And you know, like Gutman's like he thinks he had like he's telling, you know, Detective Spade like, oh, the Maltese Falcon. This is the Wikipedia page of the Maltese Falcon. You interested? It's like, you darn right. Your sure tits, I'm definitely interested. Don't put your sphincter in a twist or whatever the fuck he says. And he starts losing his vision. Like, that caught me so off guard. Like, oh my God, motherfucker got poisoned. He got roofied. He got drugged.
Got a Mickey.
And we got Mickey. And like, we as the audience were there to experience it with him, which I was so like intrigued by. Like, oh my God, like, is that happening right now? And it was. It was great. Like that was our foresight into that. Was like suddenly the lens got blurry. It's like, oh, that's his POV. Like that was. I thought that was a great moment. Was that, you know, our main guy literally being date raped.
I will go with the scene where they're all at Bogart's place, and by all it's a damsel in distress, Cairo, and then the cops show up, and so
closes the doors.
Yeah, he closes the door. And he kind of talks with the cops, and then Cairo starts yelling, and clearly there was a scuffle or something. And he's so right. It's for a character that was so quiet for so long for Bogart, right? Just absorbing everything, and he's like, gotta think quick. Like, he already knows, like, his mistress had already called the cops on him because she was jealous of seeing him with another girl. And it's like, clearly there's some shady thing going on with all these other people. And so he's just like, let's do this. And he comes out with the most ridiculous kind of thing. And just like, he knows like, hey, we can all go to jail right now. Or you guys can follow my lead, right? And so Cairo's like, yes, I fell and I tripped and I this and I that. And I just loved it because it was so wacky. And I'm like, I guess that's how the 30s were. So
well,
that to me, the quiz, one of the
quintessential.
There's a T that's throwing me off. Say it again.
Quintessential.
Quintessential. No.
Yes. That's it.
Yeah,
that was it. Yep.
I don't know. It sounds weird. Anyway, so that's kind of my one of my favorite scenes there for sure.
Oh, 100%.
Chris, yeah.
Nice. For me, it's the scene where Peter Lorre tries to stick him up, and he slaps him. And then as soon as Peter Lorre gets his chance again, he picks up his gun and is like, now put your head behind your head. Does the same exact scene. Like, that was my favorite part of the movie.
That was my favorite part as well. So
Yeah.
we can just skip over my part and Chris will do the talking for me here.
No. I mean, dude, 100%. Like, why? Why is that? Why did you love it?
Well, I think I liked it because, well, it's funny and it's
It
like
was
layered.
slapsticky almost, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and it's textured, and also Peter Lorre's he's real serious about it. Like he's like, we can just go back and do this all day and night. Like it wasn't because Humphrey Bogart, he's laughing at it, and I don't know if he was genuinely laughing or if it was a character thing. It was great, but also like Peter Lorre was so serious. He's like, all right, back to square one. I have the power again, and it's great, really funny.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it says a lot about those characters, right? Again, from the get-go, you see more of Bogart of like, before that he already said he doesn't like guns, right? He doesn't even carry a gun, so he was able to like, what's up? Like, and I thought now it was ridiculous. Remember now it's like every movie you get hit on the back of the head and you like pass out, and I was like, oh, that's so like you would have horrible brain trauma if like one hit to the back of the head knocks you out. But he almost bitch slapped him and dude just passed out, right? And then just goes through all his pockets, everything, just puts the gun there. And sure enough, when he wakes up, he's like, oh yeah, here, have your stuff, have your gun. And then he's like, oh shit, still we're doing this again. What is it? There's no honor in thieves, right? That's what there's a lot of this movie as well, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well then, let's
Michaela.
get into
Michaela didn't share hers.
Oh, she was chipping in here and there, but yeah, Michaela, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, like I think the most beautiful shot in the whole thing for me was during the scene when it was just him and her just before he turns her in, and like the way they captured the tears just going down her face. Like I don't know how Huston figured that out, but it was gorgeous.
You hold them crocodile tears there, honey. Yeah, your sweetie pie, your bazooka bubble gum.
I mean, yeah, he kind of knew it from the get-go, right? He just had to try and figure out how to get everyone. Because I thought it was also great. Hey, the cops haven't changed that much, because he's like, I ain't going to tell you what I know, because then you guys are going to throw me in. Like, I got to solve it myself, because you guys have already been shady and have, so it's similar with cops these days. Just figure it out and solve it yourself, so you can hand it to them on a silver platter, or else they'll just arrest you instead. Is what I got from that interaction with the Popo. Cool.
No, go ahead.
Well, like what I was gonna say, like it wasn't so much like the action of the scene, because like there's just so much of situations getting turned on their heads in like the most brilliant way. I was just saying, like, the fact that he captured the image the way he did was just so striking, and then like it was such an epitome of like what the cinematography is trying to do with like all these long shadows, and it's just the way that John Huston uses that camera is impeccable to the point where it's just like you want to just figure out how he just managed to get the timing to get those tears glistening the way they do, so they feel manipulative. You know?
Yeah, because I was thinking as much, I'm like, what was black and white? So they weren't doing a whole bunch of like color matching and all that, is what I'm thinking. They still had to have the lights and all that, but I'm like, how many shots? How many, how many resets? How many different angles? Because again, it's like, all right, it's in a studio, but still, it's just the idea of them, being able to play around with that in a small, tight space. Kind of like Jason also saying that it could be a play. Like, other than like the scenes where they're in the taxi, where it's kind of like he's being followed when he loses the guy, and then when they go just to the boat, you could do it all in like one location or a couple locations, right? But yeah, cool. Coolio. Oh, rest in
Oh,
peace,
I can.
Coolio. But
Which, by the way, also outlived. R.I.P. Also outlived. Relevant. Still relevant.
You are ridiculous.
yeah, he is pretty ridiculous.
I really did like
sad.
All right, now we're gonna get kind of in the thick of it. Jason had alluded to it, kind of talked about it in his initial thoughts of how now 20 years after the kind of the first time that he saw it. Well, I'll let you take it away, Jason. I don't want to put words into your boca.
Thank you, Dino. So it's a little hard to say exactly what I had a problem with, frankly, because I don't remember. I just remember the feeling.
I know. It's definitely when they accidentally called Gutman Cuntman. Like that took me out of the
They
movie.
did not say that in the version I watched.
I was thinking, was Cairo also on blackface? I couldn't quite tell if Cairo, like, if it was just kind of his complexion, makeup, or if he was just flat out, let's give him the name Cairo, and let's make him, darker. But
what's insane? Like, this is actually on a serious note. I guess because I decided to watch a few things regarding the movie, and I guess in the novel, his character is supposed to be homosexual, like almost offensively homosexual. And they said in the movie, they said that in the movie he was queer coded because they couldn't exactly straight up say it outright back then. And I didn't get that at all. I just thought it was a funny little man.
What about the part with the cane where he was like licking the cane at the remember, like, right? There was
I thought it was going
like
to be
licking the cane, like
I thought it was going to be a giant vape. Like it looked like.
I thought honestly, that's where my mind went to. I was like, "Is that a vape?" I'm not even kidding. For like a split second.
I know. I was like, they've gotten. Yeah.
How about the way Humphrey Bogart lights his matches on that thing?
Oh yeah,
that's fucking cool as hell. That is
you got
amazing.
Like that. All matches were lit on random objects up until like 1978.
Yeah, it was just every time.
One of the great shots is also Humphrey with his cigarette, and it might have been when
he's the fastest cigarette roller of all time.
Right?
He hits a cigarette in like 3 seconds.
Well, when he after he hands the gun to Cairo, and it's that cool ass thing where the cigarette's just kind of hanging low, and he's like, "Oh great, he's gonna frisk me," and that's the coolest thing of like why as a kid or whatever you wanted to smoke is because it's just dangling there. It's a side shot.
Dude, that's the Dan Aykroyd Ghostbusters when it's hanging off his lip. That's my favorite cigarette scene of all time if I have one.
Right. But that was very impressive. Also, his secretary, I think, rolls him one real quick at some point. And, it was... And then the cigar, he doesn't, quite, I see him, he kind of, the second time, he, bites the tip, but I didn't see he spit it up anywhere. I think he just, I'm such a man, I'm just going to swallow the tip.
Well, didn't Peter Lorre put, a little bit of tobacco in the corner of his mouth?
Maybe.
He did, right? When he was
talking, not paying attention at all to these tobacco scenes that you guys are bringing up. I totally missed all of that.
No, listen, the scene when Humphrey Bogart and him are just sort of talking, and they've kind of all right, they're on the level now. They're like playing with little stuff on the dresser while they're having the conversation, and he picks up something. I thought it was tobacco, and he sort of put it in his mouth.
His mouth. I agree.
Yeah.
I thought that's what was going on.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when they find out that his partner died, and they're at the scene, and in the background, in the window, there's just a guy chilling like this, watching the entire time in the background, way up high. And I was like, This is
Yeah.
like gonna be like one of those like scenes in Wizard of Oz where all of a sudden the guy shoots himself or something, you know, like Three Men and a Baby, you know, like one of those weird Easter egg scenes. Like,
It was they hang themselves is what it was in the
is that what?
You could see him hanging
Yeah.
in the tree scene. But no, I thought the same thing because also, you know, it's like, well, did anyone see it or hear it? And the guy's just like, it has the
Sitting up
best,
there.
yeah, it has
Totally
the
there.
best bird's eye
And no
view.
one asked him anything.
Lights on in his background.
Oh man! All right. Oh,
No one said a
so
word
yeah,
to that man.
I guess let's continue a little bit with Jason of his thought that he couldn't quite put the finger to of why it might.
So I think what happened was for me, it's like early on, you know, you got the delirious woman act thing happening. But then like as I begin to watch it, like she's clearly acting and they make a thing about she's putting on a show and she's putting on several shows that are on top of other shows. It's a very layered performance from her, you know? And I guess everybody kind of has that sort of layer performance. She's just using her tools, you know, like everybody else. But I guess that's what sort of makes the movie. I just don't understand why anybody in this movie puts up with anybody else.
I could see it.
Because of the Maltese Falcon.
Just feels
I
like
think-
they all. I feel like if this was a Guy Ritchie film, they would have been knocking each other off a lot sooner.
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up because I got Quentin Tarantino vibes. I got Guy Ritchie. You know, it's very much lock, stock, two, smoke and barrel, revolve. The idea of like there's an item, there's this case, right? Pulp Fiction. You know, the briefcase. Like there's this kind of thing that needs to be gotten. You don't know what's in it. You don't know what it is. You don't know. You know, and just kind of mistaken identities happening. And backstabbing, triple cross backstabbing, everything, right? And at the end, it just like unravels and everything goes to shit, and kind of no one gets anything except for the guy that really didn't want anything to begin with, you know?
Well, I mean, I feel like that's quintessential American literature, like especially contemporary American literature, anyways. You know, and I mean, if you read a lot of the stuff like Chandler, Dashiell, what's his last name? Who actually wrote the Maltese Falcon? Like all of these stories have that like those elements to it. It's a very American way of telling a story, which is like really funny because like that's what makes this part of our like iconic as a film. So
Yeah, for sure.
Tell us more about the how you the literature part of the time period of Americana, I guess. If you got any examples or.
Well, it's just like it's a very interesting moment in time, especially with America, because this is right after World War I, and so almost kind of like what happened in the '60s. This sense of innocence was lost. You know, you see a lot more anti-heroes. You see a lot more of this idea that people aren't good. Like there isn't a good guy thing. You see that a lot more, and it's just how it gets translated. It's like these super sneaky characters who no one can trust, and they're doing 5 things at once, and so it just shows like a very
one of them has a code, and because one of them has a code, you gotta root for that because at least he has a code.
Well, and it's just like this idea of like that there are no winners.
Yeah,
right.
Because you're right. It's like, did you guys believe that he really liked her? Did anyone believe that?
I don't know.
I think
it's the flaw of the movie. I feel like that was like the ending of the movie for me needed a twist, and like only because I'm 80 years later, there's twists, right? So like I wanted Peter Lorre to be the guy behind the scenes the whole time. I wanted him to be the fat man. Like in the end, I wanted it to be that it was really. This fat man was just like a caricature of Peter Lorre's. Exactly. That's what I wanted.
Which I had one moment where I kind of thought that when he was in the background and they were talking
freaked out. Yeah.
when they were talking about throwing the other guy under the bus, right? The
Yeah.
strong man. And I was
Yeah,
like,
Wilmer.
ooh,
Yeah.
maybe Gutman is just the facade, right?
I mean, dude, Peter
Yeah.
Lorre's hissy fit was amazing. It was awesome. Like when he lost it on him, he was like, "Listen, you idiot!" Like, how often you hear "you idiot"? It's Ren and Stimpy, you know. It really is.
It's iconic. That was another one. I was like, hey, that's where that's from.
I'm sure there's a lot of things like that in this movie.
But yeah, like I guess that's another reason why. Yeah, because I did expect something more to that, and the biggest twist that we get is whether or not the Falcon is real or not, and also like, did he really like? Did he play everyone from the start? I wish they were a bit more clear on that because they left it gray enough where it's like, oh, maybe he did have feelings, like he wanted the feelings to be true, but you know that they're not, and he has to uphold that bro code that he made up on that
I
scene.
think the feelings might have been true because she was someone that, to a certain extent, was also playing on different levels, right? Especially for a female, right? In that time period, that's just like, I'm playing this guy and I'm playing that guy, and I'm even gonna play these private eye guys to do my bidding because I'm gonna get what I want. Now, she didn't do it great. She did murk people from the get go, and yeah. So I think he might have. I think, you know, he might have had feelings for her, but yeah, I thought it was great that he's like, I'll wait for you. I'll wait. I'll wait
for the 20 years.
or if you get hung, if they hang you, I'll think about you. Like, why not? I'm like,
once you're thrown up, honey, you won't be the only one that's hung.
Yeah. I believe him. I believe him. He seemed fairly honest in certain moments that it's like, I think he had to respect that. I think he had to, I don't know if admire, but see what game she was playing, especially once he met the other members of the cast of characters. I think he might have been a little.
I see her more as Jamie Lee Curtis in Fish Call Wanda, man. I feel like she was like trying to handle her shit, and I felt like she was trying to manipulate the situation. I really enjoyed that about her character. I feel like Humphrey Bogart is like George Clooney tried to, you know what I mean? Like George Clooney's trying to play that role at this point.
In
Ocean's not exactly 11. The same way, but like, you get all the women. Like that was the thing. Bogart, every woman loved him in the entire movie. Even Effie kind of loved him. You know, she would do anything he said.
Could you imagine if like Kara went up to her like Detective Spade, you blind ignoramus. I was the one that was in love with you the entire time.
That would have been a good twist. Well, I mean,
I guess that's what makes these characters, like, what makes this film kind of fun. Because it almost feels like a build your own adventure, because every lie is, like, a good lie is built with the seed of truth. So, like, if you really want it to be, you could get, like, 4 different plots, technically, if you just, like, decided which ones you believe and which ones you think are an act. And I think that's also why the ending, I love that it's ambiguous, you know, because, like, you can have this fun sense of open interpretation. And I think that's another part of why it is such a big part of our culture as a zeitgeist. We love stuff like that, where you...
All right,
where
so the ambiguity of it all, before we get into final thoughts, real quick, my understanding, because at the very end they do kind of like go real quick into what exactly happened. So, spoilers on the spoilers. It's a fake Falcon, right? And they talk about the ship guy that came, but basically there was a swap that was done before, but they killed that guy, so the original now is lost. Right? Is that what happened?
The 17 years of them chasing the Falcon was all to waste because it was most likely that's where the switch came from. Was literally from the start.
It was 17 years ago that the swap was made, not before it got on the boat.
Yeah, because they theorized, like they talked about it, where I think it was Pierre Lorre's character that says like because you let him know that it was the real Falcon, that's when the switch was made. You idiot. That's why
it was
it's so easy for us to
Yes.
try to catch it. Which is funny because like he said it was easy, but they spent 17 years trying to get it. It's obviously not that easy.
Also, a Bogart, what I got was Indiana Jones vibes also. You know, when he's
Like with the actual relic, you mean?
Well, I mean, there's that, but before that already, because he has the fedora, right?
Yeah.
That's what Indy wears. And like, so kind of like when Indy is dressed up and he's trying to like avoid or evade, is that a word?
Yeah.
Well, you know, when he puts the hat on, there's a really beautiful shot of the camera pulling back behind her shoulder, and he puts the hat on and he kind of does this thing with it, kind of like messes with the brim.
Yeah.
I rewind that part like 5 times because I'm like, first off, the move was really cool, and then I had to figure out what the camera was actually doing.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, that's pretty slick. I've probably seen that in like movie retrospectives where they cut that clip in the movies before.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when they're doing like a Bogart theme, it's just kind of like we all know the Casablanca ones like to a T. I feel like, but for sure, just that kind of side thing. I just had like, oh my god, I feel like Harrison Ford, or because when they wrote those movies, it was a lot of the B flicks or the but also trying to get the allure of the machismo of the time period. Right.
At the time, for me, a lot of the male characters like Henry Fonda, like those kind of guys, they're all kind of cold, though. A lot of their characters, same thing with Humphrey Bogart, they're kind of cold people. Like you get to Jimmy Stewart, that changes things. But like you start off with like Humphrey Bogart, Henry Fonda, those guys just have like a cold existence. Like they don't show as much emotion as people that come after them. And again, like Michaela said before, like, yeah, it's World War I, World War II. Like men are, supposed to be a certain way. But like I said, like Humphrey Bogart is in control this entire movie. Every scene, he's like, hey, stop. I got this. I'm handling this. Every single scene, he does that.
It's his town.
Like women, men, it doesn't matter.
It's his town, baby.
Yeah. He totally controls everything.
Like sheer charisma to do that.
Right.
Like that's such a like just thinking about how, at an acting perspective, how to really just own a room that way. Like that's what they mean when they say X factor, is being able to walk into a space and it's under your like. He's so good at that because like I feel like that's also a big part of like why Casablanca's, because he just has that energy, which is so cool.
Yeah, he's quintessential cool.
Oh yeah, no, and it's crazy because like I don't even think him that like really attractive as a person too, but like he had like such.
Oh yeah,
like,
you wouldn't want to date him. He's probably a dick.
Yeah, no, 100%.
This one I was kind of like
this one. Saying, like they like talk about him like this. He's this huge heartthrob, but like I don't think he's like that pretty of a person.
I got him a little bit more in this one than like Casablanca or other ones. I was like, ooh, I see that. Kind of like he just. In Casablanca and other ones, he's kind of like backpedaling. He's in Casablanca. He's also in love, like that girl. Like, is that the only time that he's been heartbroken, like in a movie, where like, like the girl actually got one over him, and he's so in love with her, but he has to kind of, have the boundaries to help her out and her love interest. Whereas in this,
I would like to believe he didn't give a damn.
Yeah, that's a different movie, bro.
Well, also, like, he was kind of like a matinee idol of his day because he was like an action star, essentially, as far as action movies went back then. I mean, there's no action in this movie, but he talks with a lot of action. And every once in a while, he'll punch somebody in the head, right? Yeah.
I'm gonna slap you again, and you're gonna take it.
No, you're gonna enjoy
it. You're gonna enjoy it.
you're gonna enjoy it. You
You don't
know.
like it. Yeah, that's what he says.
Even Cairo's like, but
It's like, I don't like it.
she hit me. I was like, yeah,
And also, like Bogey has like this thing behind his eyes, like this mysterious thing. He has kind of these dark eyes that like are really great on film. So that's like easy on the eyes as well. And he was also like a matinee idol in the sense of he was a full on celebrity. You know, like he was spotted out with like other celebrities, and he was cool, and he always dressed nice. And he was actually Frank
Sinatra,
Sinatra's
exactly.
mentor. He was Sinatra's mentor.
I feel like that's what I think of when I think of him is Sinatra, dude. I agree 100%.
Yep.
That's what I think of.
Sinatra used to hang out with him when he first moved to Hollywood when he was a very young man, and he would always find himself over Bogart and Lorre and Bacall's house, just like hanging out. That's what he did. That was like his immediate like uncle and aunt kind of.
So this movie came out just a year before Casablanca, but I find the characters completely different. But it could almost
Two
be
different
the same.
movies.
Huh?
I said
Yes.
it's two different movies.
It's a different genre,
But you,
right?
you can think that it's like, oh, it's Jean-Claude Van Damme playing the same character in all his movies. But that's what you say about like other character actors from that time period. Oh, they're just doing the same kind of bit, but not.
I don't think you can pin that on Bogey though. Like Bogey
No.
did a lot of this because that was just how it was in like the
Right.
30s and 40s. But coming out of the 30s and 40s, Bogey did a lot of work as an actor that was
Like
completely
Cane
different.
Mutiny, right? Is that him? Yeah, he did a
What
bunch.
movie is that?
I think it's called the Cane Mutiny.
The
No,
Cane
like,
Mutiny.
Yeah, it's like
the
on a boat
African,
where
the African Queen. You know,
yeah, totally.
well, I'm
totally.
just saying from 1 year difference, right? From 41 to 42 when
Mhm.
Casablanca came out. Like, I'm saying it could be the same character, for instance, of where he was started, right, in San Francisco, to all of a sudden so much shit has happened and like war and everything else that he goes and ends up in Casablanca. It's like,
are you
what's
saying
that
this
shit?
could easily be the same universe? Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah. I'm
Okay,
just saying,
just
but
like this.
it's a completely different psyche at that moment, right? It's like something has clearly shifted him. I don't know if I'm explaining
I'm
myself.
pretty sure they were in the background of Space Jam, so it does exist.
Okay, fair enough. With that, if no one has anything else, let's get into final thoughts. Who wants to go first?
Like the story itself may not hold up to the way we tell stories now, and like I feel like this would be an ask a group of like random moviegoers to go see. But this movie really is a masterclass. It really is. Like, you cannot say this is a bad film. And I'm so excited I got to see it. Like, I can see myself watching this more just because I feel like I can get so much out of it. But, like, is it something that I think is a fun movie? No. But, like, I'm so glad that I've seen it, and I think this is one of my new favorite films for sure.
Noise.
Oh, that's awesome.
Was it your first time, Michaela? I can't remember.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
That's great. That's how I felt about this movie the first time I seen it as well. Upon this viewing, it's a little bit further down the totem pole. I mean, maybe I I hold this movie, The Big Sleep, and like Casablanca, like in really high regard in Bogey's catalog. And now it kind of makes me want to see The Big Sleep to see if I think that's a better movie than this. But at the time, I remember not thinking that it was. So I will say this. Does the movie hold up to the way movies are made now? Like Michaela said, it does not. It's a very talky picture. A lot of character stuff though. So I mean, it's very watchable. It's a lot of talking instead of like in today's movies, they would just show us all this action they're talking about. We would have got the flashback scene, or we would have started the movie off with Peter Lorre and what's her face fighting in Istanbul or whatever. Like we would have followed this like across countries. It would have been more of a sweeping film in Hollywood today. But with that said, I think it does still deserve a spot on the AFI 100. I think it deserves a spot for any movie lover, any Humphrey Bogart lover. If you like old movies, if you like gumshoe or detective movies, If you like a lot of double crossing and double speak movies, if you like cool dialogue, like this is a movie for you. It's as an actor, I think you should see it. It's the Cine Snob, you should see it. Uh, yeah, so I would recommend it to all those people, and I could see myself watching this again.
Nice. All right. I don't know if you were completely done, Michaela. If you have anything else, no. If not, JP. Final
I'm
thoughts.
gonna say ditto to everything what that Jason said, except that I would probably not see this movie again. But it wasn't bad. I just don't think I would watch it again. But yes, everything that Jason said, ditto.
Good. All right, Senor Christopher.
I 100% will watch it again. I think this movie for me is the flaws of this movie are things that Hollywood or directors in general and writers were trying to figure out. So any flaws in this movie for me are just things that people haven't figured out yet, like the twist ending or but there's so many things that this laid the groundwork for.
Yeah.
Like it could have been a radio thing, right? It could have been on radio back in the 1940s where you listen to the whole thing because so much action was taken away and there's so much dialogue in the movie. It could be not a movie to me. Like it could almost be like, and but at the same time, there's so much given to movies like the noir aspect with the way it was shot and those kind of things, the different contributions, don't get me wrong, but to me it also could have been amazing as like a radio play.
Yeah,
Well,
I can see that.
there was
I
a
think this
version.
occurred to me that maybe a lot of the reason why they couldn't show a lot of the exposition is probably because of the censors. Because this is 40s, right?
A lot of shooting and
So
killing.
like this must have been so thrilling. Like this is probably the closest they got to like high action.
Agreed.
Well, there was a movie. Speaking about reboots and everything else nowadays, there was this movie. There was a movie that came down in 1931. The same, the Maltese Falcon, but So I think that one was in. That wasn't a talkie, right? So you have it there that it's that's how times have changed, right? But a lot of those movies that were silent were made into sound almost immediately, especially I guess if it was um, if they were popular enough the first time around. All right, I'll go. I think I agree with a lot of what everyone else had said about it. I didn't see it as a dated thing or that it didn't fit, just because I saw it. I don't know if when a movie is in black and white, I just kind of like give it a little bit more of of a pass, or I just automatically like this is an old movie. Whereas we have one like Mank that was like I'm making a black and white movie and blah blah blah, and it's like no Mank, just let it go. So I don't know if that makes sense. I do, however, I kind of want to go back. I think Jason and maybe someone else also talked about like watch some more Bogart films, like rewatch Casablanca, like see like where this stacks up. This would be a interesting kind of like film study as well as like Bogart. But I enjoyed the film. I could probably watch it again. I don't know if like right away I would recommend it. I think I agree with the whole AFI thing. I also think going back to Cairo, uh, also it's Joel Cairo, which I thought was hilarious. Uh, I was getting vibes, kind of like a little bit uh, from Boardwalk Empire. Steve
Steve
Buscemi.
Buscemi. Yeah.
Yeah, a little
Sure.
Steve Buscemi, a little bit Javier Bardem, or maybe
It's the eyes, man. His eyes are like
something about like those you know
the character in the movie.
eyes. Yeah, and soft kind of like yeah. So for sure, I enjoyed the movie. I'd recommend it to people. If Casablanca comes up, if great black and white movies come up, And I want to go and maybe get the audiobook of the Maltese Falcon because I feel like I might really enjoy it. Yeah. So,
Just when you get the Maltese version of the audiobook, it's nothing but barking.
But chat.
chat.
It's also the name of a dog, not just
I'll-
region.
I'll keep that in mind. Jason, do you have a question you'd like to ask? Or
I do actually. I was wondering, Steve, what do you got for us next week?
Hey guys,
well, Steve is
Next
not
week,
here.
I don't know why you're asking. I'm just kidding. That was a bad.
Yeah,
that was pretty good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was pretty good.
Jason, why are you asking Steve, who is not even here, and it's your turn?
It's my turn again.
Yeah.
Did I miss that many weeks of Cinema Club?
Did
Okay.
you not get the message? Steve was like, it's Jason's turn.
I didn't, but I got some queued up because it's October right now. Regardless of when you're watching this, but it's October, so I like to go horror for October. I like to do a lot of scary movies. It's just sort of my theme. So I'm
Not
thinking
too
three
scary.
movies.
Not too scary though.
Ooh, real scary, the scariest.
Oh, no.
So what I'm thinking is we'll do three movies. I'll select three, and you guys can vote on them, and then you can get your own preference of scary level. And if not, you guys can find some balance. So for number one, our first choice will be the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Okay.
Okay. Number two, we'll say will be Young Frankenstein.
Okay.
Okay. And for number three, we'll say something weird. We'll say Pink Flamingo, the John Waters movie.
Damn. Oh my.
So we can vote. We can vote number three, Pink Flamingo. Number two, Young Frankenstein.
Or number one.
Number one. Or number one. Rocky Horror Picture Show.
How did we went from WTF to even more WTF by the third one?
Damn. Wow. So tough one, huh?
This is a tough one. I'm so
This
excited.
is the story of a girl.
I can't lose.
I'm between two.
Oh, that's
so
all.
myself and Dino.
Did you say you can't lose?
I can't lose this round. Like,
Yeah, I don't feel like anyone could lose this round. I feel like
three.
I feel like all these are probably pretty good movies to watch and talk about.
All right. I got it. I flipped a coin for my.
You guys all ready?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. And let's reveal in 3, 2, 1. We got a 2, a 2, a 3, and a 2.
Yeah.
Number 2 was Young Frankenstein. So for next week, we shall be viewing the Gene Wilder classic Young Frankenstein, Mel Brooks classic.
All right. So for Chris, Jason, Michaela, JP, and myself, Dino, join us next time. We are Oye Dimelo Cinema Club. Bye. Ciao.